Hi ladies, this is Janissa and
Asada.
of the Papyrus Book Club. So we're currently reading The Misadventures of an Awkward Black Girl by Issa Rae.
Bam.
This book so far is extremely funny. As many of you may know, Issa Rae, she was a creator of a web series, actually I think more than one web series, but she has catapulted into the limelight due to addressing somewhat unusual topics, things that aren't always discussed, such as what it means to be a normal black girl, what it means to be a normal black person, in the society, and many of the perceptions that we as black people ourselves impose upon ourselves when it comes to identifying as black. So the book made us, I guess, think of what does it mean to be a normal black girl, a normal black person. And we just wanted to share some of our opinions about that.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting, that topic, because it's something that I've kind of grappled with my entire life. That being a woman of color, being a black woman, particularly one who grew up like in the hood or an impoverished community, there was this kind of predetermined like rule book for like what you had to be, what you had to look like, what you had to listen to. Coming up in DC, of course I listened to go-go, but that wasn't like my end all be all. Like, I listened to rock more than I listened to anything else, and my aesthetic reflected that. So I was always seen as like the weird girl with my head in the Stephen King book or some other type of science fiction thing, and that feeling of like otherness kind of caused a bit of confusion, because it made me feel like maybe I wasn't as black, so then I started to identify more with white people, and that kind of separated me from my community. But it's just interesting that I had to kind of choose, you know what I mean? Because there's so many layers to what makes us who we are and what defines our identity, you know what I mean? So I think that this is a conversation that could, continue for ages.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
with the whole like intersectionalism too, like being a gay woman or a rich black woman or poor, you know what I mean? There's so many things.
Black woman.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And for me, like I think that's where my experience diverges a bit, because I was telling Asata, when I was thinking of like, okay, what were some experiences I had as an awkward black girl, I realized that growing up, I didn't really have the perception that, not that I wasn't a black girl, I knew that I was, I was of African descent. My parents raised me with the knowledge that I was of African descent, and I embraced that. And so it wasn't that I didn't see myself as a black girl, but I didn't really feel as confined to define myself, to define my blackness as certain things. Like I didn't really feel like, oh, I had to listen to certain type of music because I was black, or I had to speak a certain way because I was black. And I think much of that has to do with being from a society in which you are not the minority. I think when you see yourself reflected in people who occupy a myriad, number of roles in society, you don't see as many limitations with how you can define yourself. So I think growing up as a black girl in Trinidad and Tobago, in the Caribbean, where there were so many examples of what I could be, I didn't feel as constrained. I didn't feel as constrained with how I defined my blackness. If anything, I felt more constrained by how I defined my Trinidadianness. Like I felt more of an outsider when it came to the question of what made me a normal Trinidadian. There were many things that I didn't really represent, as far as the status quo, what it meant to be a Trinidadian teenager or whatever. But so that experience was a bit different. And when I came to the US, I confronted that issue of identity, of racial identity, in a way that I didn't confront it before, in the Caribbean. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head with that one. I think because Black people in this country are the minority, and there is another group that have established the status quo and have defined what is normal, and especially with that dominant culture and dominant group imposing wills upon us, holding on to our culture and what was ours became like fiercely protected. So that was what it meant to be Black, listening to hip hop or listening to blues or jazz or R&B, wearing, certain clothes. And so I totally understand that. But in branching out into the broader cultures and stuff, you start to feel a little bit ostracized when you don't solely kind of claim that culture. So it's interesting. As I've grown, I've been able to kind of come to grips with that and see how we've influenced so many things that are so-called not ours.
Exactly. Exactly.
So
yeah, it's so ironic, and it's so the idea of ownership, like when it comes to identity. Because as you say, like even rock and roll is kind of interesting because Black people invented rock and roll.
Exactly.
But it came to be seen as something white, and
which was by design.
And you wonder, years from now, will hip hop be seen as something white?
Right.
Will reggae be seen as something white?
Right. I mean, because I just saw something on Instagram where they were like, Joss Stone won for like reggae album of the year. I was like, what the frig? What?
Yeah, like they're ridiculous with it.
So,
and I guess so when it comes to defining normalcy in terms of what it means to be Black, does it come from a place of promoting solidarity or promoting community? Like we kind of want to keep ourselves, I don't say contained, but we want to keep ourselves together, so we set certain parameters
to be able to
enrich,
yeah.
But it's a double-edged sword, because then those things could be limiting, and those things can prevent us from advancing. Those things can prevent us from empowering ourselves, and they're just plain silly sometimes, like the notion that Black people don't swim. Like so many people in this world who are Black live by the ocean, and they've lived by the ocean for centuries.
Right.
Many of our ancestors came from places that were on the sea. So there's so many things that we have embraced as abnormal, or that we defined as abnormal for Black people to do.
Yeah, and it may be born out of like maybe simply not having the resources.
Right,
to do
exactly.
That. So it becomes this other thing that because it's not accessible to us, it becomes that's what other people do. We don't do that. We don't hike, or we don't, basic things like that.
Right.
So
and we shouldn't, I definitely think that there is beauty and there are benefits to claiming certain things as our own, but we don't want to do it to the extent that it's limiting, or that it's damaging. Because I think one example of that is telling Black children, or saying that Black people don't swim, and therefore not teaching a Black child how to swim, and he or she could drown,
Right.
So, or just which this one thing is changing, the notion that we don't travel. That I will say has drastically changed. When we look at Instagram, we see so many people's feeds about there's so many feeds, so many travel groups, so many feeds inspired by Black people traveling, And it's beautiful. It's beautiful that we are expanding our boundaries and we are pushing the limits of what we as a people do. And I think we definitely should continue doing those things.
Yeah, because it exposes and enriches our culture even more to travel outside the bounds of what our cultural identity is. And y'all know, me and Jen are like the biggest proponents of African culture, her Caribbean culture, my African American culture. Like, we're like, all that is blackness, you know, just in many different forms, many different places. So we're the biggest proponents of that. It's just we don't want to get so locked in that we limit ourselves, like she was saying, to exposure to things that can actually be beneficial to our culture.
So feel free to share your awkward black girl moments or traits, and just share your thoughts on the topic
in the comments.
And soon we will be sharing the review of the book These Adventures of an Awkward Black Girl by Issa Rae.
So if you haven't got it, get it now. Peace.
All right, peace.